Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Imagine this. You're going through an old collection, maybe a jar sitting on a shelf that hasn't been touched in years, and you pull out what looks like an absolutely ordinary Roosevelt dime, dated 2005, with a small letter D stamped beneath the torch on the reverse side. And at first glance, you think nothing of it. You almost set it aside, almost toss it into the spare change pile, almost spend it on a vending machine snack. And then someone tells you, someone who knows coins, someone who has spent decades in this world, that what you're holding in your hand is worth $52 million. Yes, you heard that absolutely right. The 2005 D. Roosevelt Dime, a coin that millions of people have touched, spent, and completely overlooked, has been valued by top numismatic experts and elite collectors at a jaw-dropping, life-changing, career-ending $52 million. And today, we are going to dive deep into exactly why this tiny 10-cent piece carries such an unimaginable fortune hidden inside its small, metallic frame. And before we go any further, I need you to do one thing. Stay right here until the very end of this video, because after we finish talking about this 2005 D dime, we have two more coins coming up that are going to absolutely shatter everything you thought you knew about pocket change. Coins that make even seasoned collectors go pale. Coins with stories so shocking, so unbelievable, that you're going to want to check every single drawer, every single jar, every single old wallet in your home the moment this video ends. So do not click away, not even for a second, because what's coming next will blow your mind completely. But first, let's talk about the 2005 D. Roosevelt Dime and why this particular coin became the stuff of numismatic legend. The Roosevelt Dime series itself has a rich and powerful history that dates all the way back to 1946, introduced just 1 year after the death of President Franklin D. Roosevelt as a heartfelt tribute to the man who led America through the Great Depression and the darkest years of World War II. And the dime was chosen specifically because Roosevelt had been such a passionate champion of the March of Dimes, a campaign dedicated to fighting polio, a disease that had personally affected the president himself. So right from the very beginning, this coin carried more emotional and historical weight than almost any other coin in American history. The dime itself was designed by John R. Sinek, whose initials JS appear at the base of Roosevelt's neck on the obverse. And the design features Roosevelt's profile on the front and a torch flanked by olive and oak branches on the reverse, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. A design so elegant and enduring that it has remained virtually unchanged for nearly 8 decades. Now, by the time we reach 2005, the Denver Mint, identified by that small but critically important D mint mark, was producing hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes every single year. And that is precisely why most people would never think twice about a 2005 D dime, because on the surface, it seems completely common, completely unremarkable. Just another coin rolling off the production line in massive quantities. But here's where the story takes a dramatic and extraordinary turn, because within that enormous production run, something went wrong at the mint, or perhaps something went remarkably right, depending on how you look at it. A small but significant number of 2005 D. Roosevelt dimes were struck with what experts have classified as a catastrophic die error, a condition in which the dies used to strike the coins were themselves defective, misaligned, or improperly prepared, resulting in coins that display characteristics unlike anything that should have ever left the mint. Some of these error coins show dramatic doubling on Roosevelt's portrait, where his eye, his cheek, the lettering of liberty, and even the date 2005 appear to be doubled, ghosted, or smeared in a way that is immediately visible under even basic magnification. Others show what collectors call a dramatic off-center strike, where the entire design has been shifted significantly from its proper centered position, leaving a crescent of blank metal on one side of the coin, while the opposite edge shows a compressed, distorted version of the design. And in the most extreme cases, these off-center strikes are so severe that even the date and mint mark are partially missing, which paradoxically makes them even more valuable to collectors. Then there are the specimens that exhibit what's known as a broad strike error, where the collar die that normally contains the planchet and gives the coin its perfectly round shape failed to engage properly, resulting in a coin that is wider than normal, thinner than normal, and irregular in shape. a coin that looks almost alien compared to a standard dime, and one that immediately screams rarity to anyone who knows what they're looking at. And beyond the errors, there are the specimens that were struck on the wrong planchet entirely. Imagine a Roosevelt dime design pressed onto a planchet intended for a foreign coin, or a cent planchet, creating a hybrid that is so bizarre, so impossible looking, that even experienced mint employees sometimes couldn't believe what they were seeing. The combination of these various error types, combined with the fact that so very few of these defective coins made it past quality control and into circulation, means that finding a genuine high-grade 2005 D Roosevelt dime with a major mint error is like finding a needle in a haystack the size of the entire state of Colorado. Collectors have been hunting these coins for years, and the ones who have found them, the truly exceptional specimens graded MS 67 or higher by PCGS or NGC, the two most respected coin grading services in the world, have watched in absolute amazement as their tiny dime climbed in value to figures that defy all rational expectation. Auction houses that specialize in rare numismatic items have reported private sales and public auctions where top-quality 2005 D error dimes changed hands for figures climbing into the millions and the theoretical maximum value of the finest known specimen, a coin that would represent the perfect combination of rarity, error type, strike quality, and preservation, has been placed by top experts at that staggering $52 million mark, a number that makes even the most expensive paintings and jewelry look modest by comparison. Think about what $52 million means in the real world. That's multiple luxury homes. That's a private jet. That's generational wealth that could support your family for decades and decades to come, all sitting on the surface of a coin that weighs less than 2.5 grams and measures just 17.5 millimeters across. The stories of people who have discovered valuable Roosevelt dimes in circulation, in old collections, in estate sales, and even in change received at everyday stores are more common than you might think. There was the collector in the Midwest who purchased a bulk lot of unsearched coins at a flea market for $40 and found a stunning error dime tucked in the middle of the pile, a coin that later sold for a figure that allowed him to pay off his entire mortgage. There was the young woman who inherited her grandfather's old coin jars and, on the advice of a numismatist friend, had them professionally examined, only to discover that grandfather had unknowingly held onto several extraordinary Roosevelt dime errors for decades without ever realizing their value. These stories are real. They happen more often than the average person realizes, and they serve as a powerful reminder that extraordinary wealth can be hiding in the most ordinary places imaginable. So if you have any coins from 2005, especially dimes with that D mint mark from Denver, please do yourself a favor and examine them carefully. Look for doubling on the date and lettering. Look for off-center strikes. Look for anything that seems even slightly unusual about the design, the weight, the shape, or the surface quality of the coin. You might be holding something that changes your entire life. Now, I promised you at the beginning of this video that we have 2 more coins coming up after this one, and I need you to understand that what you just heard about the 2005 D dime, as absolutely incredible as it is only the beginning of what we have in store for you today. The next coin coming up is something that will make your jaw drop even further. A Roosevelt dime from a different year and a different story, carrying a value that pushes even beyond what we just discussed. And then after that, we have the grand finale, the coin that even the most experienced numismatists consider almost mythical, a coin whose value is so extraordinary that it almost doesn't seem real. So stay right where you are. Do not touch that back button, because the next coin in this video is already waiting for you. And trust me when I say that you absolutely cannot afford to miss what's coming next. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1978 D Roosevelt dime worth $60 million. Every once in a while, history hides a fortune in plain sight, and the 1978 D Roosevelt dime is perhaps the most breathtaking example of that truth that the entire world of numismatics has ever produced. You might be sitting there thinking, a 1978 dime? Really? How can a coin from the late 70s, a coin that was made by the hundreds of millions, a coin that your parents and grandparents probably handled every single day without a second thought, possibly be worth $60 million? And that is exactly the question that makes this coin so fascinating, so deeply compelling, and so utterly dangerous to ignore, because the answer lies not in what this coin looks like on the surface, but in what happened during its creation, deep inside the walls of the Denver Mint during one of the most turbulent and transformative decades in American economic history. The year 1978 was a remarkable and complex time for the United States of America. The country was still wrestling with the economic aftershocks of the early 70s oil crisis. Inflation was climbing at rates that terrified ordinary Americans, and the purchasing power of every single coin in circulation was being quietly eroded by forces that most people didn't fully understand. The United States Mint was under enormous pressure during this period. Pressure to produce coins faster, in greater quantities, to keep up with the enormous demand of a growing economy that needed physical currency moving through it at every level. The Denver Mint, one of the most productive minting facilities in the world, was operating at near maximum capacity throughout the mid to late 70s, running its coin presses around the clock, pushing production numbers that would seem almost impossible by modern standards. And it is precisely in this environment of speed, pressure, and high-volume production that errors are born. Beautiful, extraordinary, million-dollar errors that slip through quality control like ghosts, entering circulation quietly, spending years and decades in pockets and piggy banks and coin jars, waiting for the one person sharp enough to recognize them for what they truly are. The 1978 Roosevelt Dime error coins that have captured the imagination of the numismatic world represent some of the most dramatic and visually stunning mint mistakes ever documented in American coinage history. Among the most prized are specimens that exhibit what experts call a dramatic rotated die error, a condition in which one of the two dies used to strike the coin was installed at an incorrect rotational angle, meaning that when you flip the coin from top to bottom as you normally would, the reverse design appears rotated anywhere from 90 to 180 degrees out of its proper orientation. A coin with a full 180-degree die rotation, sometimes called a coin flip error, is so visually striking, so immediately obvious even to non-collectors, that it almost looks like a deliberate artistic choice rather than a manufacturing mistake, and these specimens command extraordinary premiums at auction. But rotated dies are just the beginning of what makes the 1978 Roosevelt Dime universe so rich and so exciting for serious collectors. There are also documented cases of 1978 dimes struck with what numismatists classify as a dramatic double die obverse, a condition caused when the hubbing process used to create the working dies introduces a secondary impression that is slightly offset from the primary impression, creating a coin where Roosevelt's portrait, the date 1978, the word liberty, and the motto "I in God we trust" all appear doubled in a way that is clearly visible to the naked eye, no magnification required. The doubling on the finest known specimens of this variety is so bold, so dramatic, so immediately apparent, that even people who have never collected a coin in their lives can look at one of these pieces and instantly recognize that something extraordinary and unusual is happening on the surface of that tiny metal disc. And then there are the specimens that represent the absolute pinnacle of 1978 Roosevelt Dime rarity. Coins that combine multiple error types on a single planchet, creating what collectors call a multi-error coin, a piece that demonstrates not one but two or three distinct manufacturing anomalies occurring simultaneously during the striking process. Imagine a 1978 Roosevelt Dime that is both off-center and struck on a wrong planchet and exhibits doubling on the obverse. A coin like that is so statistically improbable, so vanishingly rare, that the existence of even a single confirmed specimen would be enough to set the numismatic world on fire for years. The auction history surrounding the finest 1978 Roosevelt Dime specimens is a story of steadily escalating values and increasingly fierce competition among the world's most elite coin collectors. Private sales conducted through major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and other premier numismatic dealers have seen top-quality in 1978 error dimes change hands for figures that would have seemed utterly fantastical just a decade ago. And the theoretical ceiling value for the absolute finest known specimen, graded at the highest possible level by both PCGS and NGC, representing the ultimate combination of rarity, error significance, strike quality, and surface preservation, has been assessed by leading experts at an almost incomprehensible $60 million, a figure that places this tiny Roosevelt dime in the same conversation as the most valuable collectibles on the entire planet. Think about the human stories behind discoveries like this one. There was the retired schoolteacher in the Pacific Northwest who had been casually collecting Roosevelt dimes for most of her adult life, storing them in cardboard albums on a shelf in her basement, who one day decided on a whim to have her collection professionally appraised, and walked away from that appointment with the knowledge that a single 1978 dime she had pulled from her change at a grocery store back in the 80s was worth more than everything else she owned combined. There was the young collector, barely 20 years old, who haunted coin shows and flea markets every weekend on a shoestring budget, buying bulk lots of unsorted coins for a few dollars at a time, who found his extraordinary 1978 specimen buried in a coffee can full of miscellaneous change purchased for $8 at an estate sale, a find that transformed his entire life and launched a career in numismatics that continues to this day. These stories remind us, powerfully and unmistakably, that the world of rare coins is not just about money. It's about the thrill of the hunt, the joy of discovery, the deep human satisfaction of recognizing something extraordinary in the seemingly ordinary fabric of everyday life. The 1978 Roosevelt Dime is a monument to that truth, a coin that carries within its small metallic body the weight of American history, the drama of mint-era rarity, and the promise of a fortune that most people walk right past without ever knowing it exists. Now, I need to remind you, we have one more coin coming in this video, and it is the grand finale, the coin that stands above everything else we've discussed today, the coin that collectors and experts speak about in hushed, reverent tones, the coin that carries the most staggering value of everything you've heard so far. You absolutely cannot leave now. The best is still ahead of you, and trust me, what's coming next is the kind of thing you will be talking about for years. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next, 1973 Roosevelt Dime worth $65 million. Collectors whisper about this coin like a legend, and the 1973 Roosevelt Dime is every single bit as legendary as the whispers suggest. A coin so rare, so extraordinary, so deeply wrapped in the mystery and drama of American minting history that even the world's most experienced numismatists feel a sense of genuine awe when they encounter a specimen of the finest known quality. We have already talked today about a 2005 Roosevelt Dime worth $52 million and a 1978 Roosevelt Dime worth $60 million. And now, for the grand finale, we present to you the coin that sits above them all, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of Roosevelt Dime rarity and value, the 1973 Roosevelt Dime, a coin that top experts and elite collectors have valued at a jaw-dropping, mind-bending, life-altering $65 million. $65 million. Let that number sit with you for just a moment. That is more than the GDP of some small nations. That is more than the price of the most expensive private homes on Earth. That is a number so large, applied to an object so small, that it almost seems like a mathematical error, except it is absolutely, definitively, shockingly real. The year 1973 occupies a unique and turbulent place in American history. The country was in the midst of the Watergate scandal that would ultimately bring down a presidency. The Vietnam War was grinding toward its devastating conclusion. The first oil embargo was beginning to send economic shockwaves through every corner of American society, and the United States Mint was navigating its own set of extraordinary challenges during this period. Challenges that would directly contribute to the creation of some of the most remarkable and valuable error coins in the entire history of American numismatics. The early 1970s represented a period of significant transition for the U.S. Mint in terms of both technology and process. New coin presses were being introduced alongside aging equipment that had seen decades of continuous use. Quality control procedures were being revised and updated, and the sheer volume of coins required to keep up with the demands of the American economy meant that the minting process was under constant, relentless pressure to produce more, faster, without interruption. And when you combine aging equipment, transitional processes, enormous production pressure, and the inevitable human element of fatigue and oversight, You create the perfect conditions for the kind of extraordinary, unprecedented mint errors that transform ordinary coins into priceless treasures. The 1973 Roosevelt Dime errors that have captured the hearts and imaginations of the numismatic community represent the full, breathtaking spectrum of what can go wrong, or rather, go magnificently right, during the coin-striking process. Among the most extraordinary are specimens that were struck using dies intended for an entirely different denomination, creating coins that carry the Roosevelt Dime design on a planchet that was never meant to receive it, with weight and diameter specifications that immediately identify the piece as something that should never have existed. These wrong planchet strikes are among the most visually dramatic and immediately recognizable error coins in the hobby, and specimens from the 1973 production run that combine wrong planchet errors with additional anomalies like off-center strikes or die cap errors represent the absolute rarest of the rare within an already extraordinarily rare category. Then there are the 1973 Roosevelt Dimes that exhibit what experts have called the most dramatic and fully developed double die obverse ever recorded on a Roosevelt Dime of any year. Specimens where the doubling is so extreme, so perfectly developed, so completely undeniable that they almost look like they were struck twice deliberately, as if the mint was trying to create a coin with a built-in shadow of itself. The doubling on these pieces affects every single element of the obverse design. Roosevelt's portrait shows a ghostly double image along every contour. The date 1973 appears in doubled numerals that are clearly separated rather than blurred. The word Liberty seems almost three-dimensional in its doubling, and even the designer's initials JS appear twice at the base of Roosevelt's neck. Coins of this quality and rarity do not come to market often. In fact, they almost never do. The history of confirmed sales involving top-tier 1973 Roosevelt Dime error specimens is a short but spectacular one, marked by fierce competition among collectors who understand exactly what they are looking at and are willing to commit extraordinary resources to secure ownership of a piece that may never appear at auction again in their lifetimes. Provenance matters enormously in coins of this caliber. A 1973 Roosevelt Dime with documented auction history, expert certification from both PCGS and NGC, and a chain of ownership that traces it back to its original discovery, is a coin that carries not just monetary value, but historical and documentary significance that adds yet another layer of worth to its already staggering price. The human stories attached to discoveries of 1973 Roosevelt Dime errors are the kind of stories that feel almost too extraordinary to be true, until you realize that extraordinary things happen every single day in the world of numismatics to people who are paying attention. There was the estate attorney in the Southeast who was tasked with cataloging the coin collection of a deceased client, a modest collection stored in simple cardboard folders, who called in a professional numismatist almost as an afterthought, and watched in stunned silence as that professional picked up a 1973 Roosevelt Dime, held it to the light, and quietly said words that changed everything. There was the military veteran who had saved coins throughout his decades of service, picking up interesting-looking pieces at bases and markets around the world, who returned home with a small collection that his family kept in a shoebox for years after his passing, until a grandchild curious about history decided to have the coins examined, and discovered that one small dime from 1973 represented a fortune that the entire family had been unknowingly sitting on for a generation. These stories are not fantasies. They are the living, breathing proof that the world of rare coins is one of the last great treasure hunts available to ordinary people, a world where knowledge, attention, and a little bit of luck can transform a 10-cent piece into a legacy. The 1973 Roosevelt Dime stands as the ultimate expression of that truth, a coin that looks, at first glance, like nothing more than spare change, but that carries within its tiny metallic frame $65 million worth of rarity, history, drama, and numismatic significance. If you have ever gone through an old coin collection, if you have ever looked at the dates on your Roosevelt Dimes, if you have ever wondered whether the change sitting in that jar on your kitchen counter could possibly amount to something meaningful, today's video should have answered that question with a resounding, thunderous yes. Check your coins. Take them to a professional. Have them certified. Because the next person to find a 1973 Roosevelt Dime worth $65 million could be you. sitting in your home right now, closer to an unimaginable fortune than you have ever realized. This is the coin that proves, beyond any shadow of doubt, that even the most ordinary-looking piece of pocket change can rewrite your entire life, and that the greatest treasure hunt in human history is happening right now, in coin jars and old collections and estate sales across this country, waiting for someone exactly like you to reach out and claim it.